With that are some things like we have to get rid of our unfunded liabilities, put everything back on the budget, get rid of baseline budgeting schemes. I don't know if you're familiar with baseline budgeting, but whenever any item is put into the budget, they automatically set the amount for the next 5 years, and it always goes up. And they say that'll be our baseline. So, and I'm just making these numbers up, don't quote me on these, I'm just using it as an example. Let's say the Department of Agriculture budget this year is, you know, $100 million. Well, when they do that, they'll say next year it's going to be 110, then it'll be 120, 130 on out. Well, the next year rolls around, it was 100 billion, or I'm sorry, million, and it's baselined at 110, but they go, well, let's just make it 105. Well, what's happened? You and I look at it and we go, the budget went up $5 million. They come back and go, no, we cut the budget $5 million. Okay? And you'll see stories like the National Park Service talking about how they can't possibly keep up with the new mandates to keep our parks safe from terrorists because every single year since 2001, their budget's been slashed. And then you look at it and every single year the budget's gone up. But it's been slashed because of the baseline budgeting game. So we got to get rid of those kind of things. And we have to get back transparency. And that means we have to get rid of these 3 different budgets that they can go back behind closed doors and come out with their conference abortions. We need to get it back to one single budget. Again, on our articles, we cover this all in Article 6 in depth. Keep in mind the main goal. The goal here is to stop the flow of benefits going out. And with that, I think we'll stop at this point for our break. And we'll come back for the other 2 fixes. Mark?
I've got copies of the articles on DVD. Please, everyone, take them, make copies, give them to friends.
Great, thank you.
Up on the table here. There's only 8 of the 12 that are on there, but a lot of the stuff here is going over in there. They're also available on the internet, but I figured I'd bring the DVD copies.
Right.
I know North Carolina sometimes only has dial-up.
Okay. By the way, this is Mark Brandon Hopp. Mark is the iCaucus volunteer director here in North Carolina. Everybody in iCaucus is 100% unpaid volunteers, and Mark has stepped into the void and has chosen to be the volunteer to run things here. So with that, we'll do our 10-minute break. Thank you. Eliminates funding liabilities was the only one that I missed talking about. As you know, we have certain items that are off budget, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, things like that. They aren't even on the budget. So when Bill Clinton balanced the budget back in the 90s, it was interesting because the national debt went up every year. And the way they did that is they took all the money coming in for Social Security and those other receipts off budget and brought it in, and it showed plus on the budget for the year. But then all the money that we owed, it's off budget, doesn't count. So we don't show the negative to that. We don't show what we owe. And so that's how we quote unquote balance the budget. Well, we've got to eliminate that because we need to know if we're going to ever get a handle on what that budget should be, we need to know what that spending is. The rest, baseline budgeting, transparency code we talked about. So now that takes care of the budgeting side. If we did that, if we got to a point where we put our senators back and representatives back in a position where any spending proposal had to compete in the open market, if you will, of ideas or the open market of projects, and the senators had to pick and choose, we'd start seeing an end to the to you vote for mine, I'll vote for yours. Second thing, you will get this red herring on that process with the budget. You talk to any incumbent about setting those spending limits, you're going to get told that's not how the budget process works. You don't know, you don't understand the legislative process. It's too complicated, okay? And here's why that's a red herring, okay? The reason it's a red herring is that the current system was put in place in 1974 by those guys, a bunch of representatives in bell bottoms and long hair. They're the ones who put in the current budget process. This is not a constitutional process that has been in place forever. It's not something that Madison and Hamilton argued about how they should do. It's nothing that would have ever shown up in the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Henry Clay and Daniel Webster never would have gone to battle over this. It was just put in motion in 1974, and it was done with a simple majority vote in Congress. That's all it took to set this current system in motion. And as I've showed you earlier, it's taken them 36 years, and in 36 years, they've figured out how to game the system every possible way. Okay? That's why you see that chart from 1974 taking off as it went across to the left. So if it only took a simple majority vote in 1974, I don't care how complex it is, I don't care if it's not the current process, all it's going to take is a simple majority vote in the House today to change it. So don't let them give you that red herring. It's one red herring I hear over and over and over again from incumbents when we're arguing about it. Second thing is we need a tax policy that does 2 things. One, It would eliminate special tax treatment of one group over another. That's what we need. And two, we need a policy that will redirect IRS with a different mission, what should be their true mission. Think about any company that has an internal auditing service, if you will, or an internal auditing department. What are they checking? They're checking how funds are being used. They're checking how funds are being spent. They're not worried about how the company, how they're doing sales and bringing money in. They're worried about what's happening to that money once it's in. Our IRS should not be worrying about how we make our money. They should be looking at how our government is spending and using our money. That's what the IRS should be doing. And I would propose to you that of all the various tax plans out there, there is only one that accomplishes both of those goals. And that would be the fair tax is a bill that's in Congress right now that's been proposed for many, many years. That would be one version of it. We don't necessarily say it has to be fair tax, but it should be a tax on consumption rather than production. That is the only tax that you can do equitably, where no matter who you tax, it's the same rate for everybody. It's also the only tax system that gets that IRS redirected to their proper role, where they're watching how government's using our money instead of how we make our money. A lot of people that I talk to really want to promote, instead of a consumption tax, a flat tax. I want to tell you about my personal experience with a flat tax, because we helped elect a governor in 2004 who ran in Utah that he would bring the flat tax to Utah. In Utah, we would not have a graduated income tax, we would have a flat tax. And he is true to his word. He got elected, he proposed the flat tax, and then everybody came out of the woodworks to tell what they thought of that. And as you know, in Utah, the Mormon church is pretty big there. They got a lot of influence on people. The day after the flat tax was introduced, they came out with an official statement. They said, this is a great idea. It's a phenomenal idea, as long as you don't mess with that deduction for charitable contributions. And then the Realtors Association held a press conference, and they said, we support the governor 100%. This is a great idea, as long as you don't mess with that deduction for home ownerships, right? And so what happens with the flat tax, in my opinion, is what we've seen since 1913, is all we're going to do is reset, and we're going to start playing the games all over again. Those games are going to, and I tell you this, every time I propose a tax increase, the one thing, or a tax increase or decrease or any kind of tax, the one thing that you can guarantee will happen is it becomes a boon for the congressman in terms of getting campaign donations, either for it or against it, okay? That's why we really say we need to get to a consumption tax. Start taxing how we consume, not how we produce, and turn the IRS around. Third thing, and we talk about that in Article 7, in our articles in the Independence Caucus. If you've picked up that disc, you'll find that in Article 7. And the third thing is, because remember, the third thing is exemption from the rule of law. We need to return to states' rights and constitutional authority. That's the third thing. If you think about it, those three things, a fixed by budget, a tax system that doesn't treat one group differently than another and redirects their IRS with a new mission, and a return on the emphasis to state rights and constitutional authority, you have solved every problem we've got falls under one of those three headings, including social issues. And just so you know, we have focused, we've kind of put it into this statement. We say we are looking for candidates who are fiscally responsible, or who commit to fiscal responsibility through adherence to constitutional authority. That's our little tagline, okay? I have people come up to me and they'll go, what about abortion? Abortion's important. It's probably the most important issue to some people. You know, it's sanctity of life. Why aren't you focusing on abortion? And I put it to them this way. It doesn't matter if your congressman or representative is opposed to abortion. If they are part of this system that is handing out the earmarks, they are funding Planned Parenthood. They are funding the other side. Directly, either through various earmarks, or indirectly because they keep voting for the budget. I'll vote for yours if you vote for mine. Most of Planned Parenthood money comes from the federal government. They are funding the National Council of, even if they're against immigration, they're funding National Council of La Raza through Barbara Boxer and her earmarks. This system has to change if we really want to take care of the social issues. And if you look at the third one, state rights and constitutional authority, if you really find candidates who will commit to that, there's no reason the federal government should be involved in abortion anyway, okay? Because it's not a federal issue. Education's not a federal issue. And that's why we focus on these three things. I was quoted in the New York Times at one point. They were doing an article about why So many of the patriotic groups today are not focusing on social issues. And the quote I said, which I didn't say it as a quote, I was just trying to explain it to her, but the quote came out, every time you add something to your agenda beyond fiscal responsibility and constitutional authority, you're adding planks to your agenda, and planks become splinters. And that's really what we have to avoid right now, because the other side is just as splintered as we are. If you think it's hard to get 9/12 and Tea Party groups to agree on things, try getting the other side to agree on things. It's really hard to do, because you have everybody from the very wacko Jerry Brown left to what are called the Blue Dogs. You know, you've got a broad spectrum over there too. They're no more united on things than you'll find on the conservative side, except for one thing. They have all united on this premise: we will vote for the candidate that will keep supplying the benefits. They're united on that. And it doesn't matter to them. If you look at the political agenda of Bill Clinton to Barack Obama to Joe Lieberman, you look at all those agendas, they're all over the map, and they don't care either. All they care about is they're going to vote for one of them, because whichever one they vote for is going to keep those benefits flowing. That's how they've united. It's up to us to unite on the opposite. We have to unite on fiscal responsibility and returning to constitutional authority. Let's unite on that. Let's get that taken care of. Then the social issues, not only will they be helped by doing those things in the first place, but we can get back to actually a debate on a level playing field, where when you find time in the evening to work in favor of your social issue, you're not competing with somebody who's full-time paid employee working on that other side of that issue, okay? So now the question is it really possible for us to make a difference? And I want to talk to you about how we got Jason Chaffetz elected. We call it the Jason Chaffetz miracle. In 2008, we the people had our candidate. His name was Jason Chaffetz. As I told you before, he was a place kicker for BYU, kicked the winning field goal, didn't have very much other things going for him that anybody would point to. On the congressional side, we had a 6-term Republican incumbent named Chris Cannon. Now, Utah's the reddest state in the nation. Chris Cannon was our 6-term Republican incumbent, and every year he came back to tell us how he was doing such good things for us and that we needed to keep electing him because he started to get seniority, and he was the only one who could go there and fight the Democrats and those vile plans that Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi had in store for us. And not only that, but he was a very good Republican. He was President Bush's point man in the House for his immigration policies. Well, except that those immigration policies, the DREAM Act, Ag Jobs, basically amnesty, he was the point man for that. He was the point man for President Bush's No Child Left Behind, which, by the way, still was a great thing. He was really proud of that because all you have to do is administer it right and it'll be okay. Okay. He never found an earmark he didn't like. He voted every time to raise the debt ceiling when the votes came up, because if otherwise the government would shut down. And we saw what happened in 1996 when we let the government shut down. It was disastrous for Republicans. He couldn't let that happen. Okay, so this is what we had. And in Utah, Utah's got this unique situation that 90% of the population of the entire state is in this corridor about 90 miles long by about 30 miles wide. The entire rest of the state is either federal land or gophers or, it's, natural wonders and so forth, but there's no people. So everybody's in this strip, and so there's only 3 papers that matter, and there's only one radio station and television station that really matters. It's KSL. And KSL did a report that Chris Cannon, and they used the terms, was going to burn Jason Chaffetz in the primary. It was going to be a mismatch of historic proportions. And the reason they said was, number one, the first thing that Chris Cannon could set the fire with, he was a prolific fundraiser, and he did outraise and outspend Jason Chaffetz by more than 6-to-1, whereas Jason was outspent 6-to-1, so he had that big red strike against him. The second thing that they said Chris Cannon would burn is he was endorsed by the President of the United States, both United States senators, all the Republican congressmen, the Republican Party establishment, and all 3 newspapers that mattered. Meanwhile, Jason was endorsed by literally nobody. We, just prior to the primary, we got 2 or 3 state legislators to come out and endorse him out of the 180-some total legislators, and that's all we could get the endorsements for. Chris Cannon had paid campaign staff. That's how you run these days, because this is big business. And a lot of the paid campaign staff I knew from Chris Cannon, I'd seen their resumes. They tend to go around the country and they work for one campaign after another. They're like hired guns. Okay, that's how you do this. Jason did it with 100% unpaid volunteers. I was one of them. I was his number 6 volunteer that signed up. Basically all of us, none of us, of course, got paid. Jason is a notorious cheapskate. That caught in the office was not a publicity gimmick. He is just notorious for that. Second,